Good evening and thank you for joining us for this special edition of ABC 7, what was supposed to be after the Monday night football game between the Bills and the Bengals. But of course, that game has been suspended for the night. I'm Eric Elkin. Stephanie Valle has the night off, and we are in the ABC 7 Alert Center following that breaking news after a Buffalo Bills player collapses on the field during that game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Happened in the first quarter. That game now suspended for the night. The players, coaches, and officials visibly shaken on the field, many of them in tears. The NFL has issued a statement. It reads in part, quote, Damar Hamlin received immediate medical attention on the field by team and medical staff and local paramedics. He was then transported to a local hospital where he is in critical condition. Our thoughts are with Damar and the Buffalo Bills. We will provide more information as it becomes available. The NFL has been in constant communication with the NFL Players Association. It is in agreement with postponing the game. And again, this is something that has just been happening within the last couple of hours. That game postponed in the first quarter. We are not going to show you the play in which it happened. We do have ABC 7 Sports Director Adrian Ochoa standing by, though, to break down exactly what's happened. Adrian.
Yeah, Eric, just a scary situation that's unfolding in Cincinnati tonight. Of course, our prayers going out to Damar Hamlin. And here's what we know about Hamlin. We realize some of our viewers aren't sports fans, but Hamlin is just 24 years old now. Hamlin tackled Cincinnati wide receiver T. Higgins during the game. He got up to his feet and then he fell to the ground shortly after he made that tackle. Now, Hamlin was drafted in the 6th round of the 2021 NFL draft by the Buffalo Bills. Now, after that hit, he was reportedly given CPR on the field before ultimately being driven away in an ambulance where he was reportedly accompanied by his family. During the broadcast, they did mention that his mother was there at the game in Cincinnati. Now, per the NFL statement, Hamlin was transported to a local hospital and is in critical condition. A local media outlet in Cincinnati is actually reporting that Hamlin has been intubated, which means he is on a ventilator, according to that report that was made by Cincinnati local media affiliate. The delay over at the game lasted well over 50 minutes and saw both clubs depart for their respective locker rooms. Head coaches Sean McDermott and Zach Taylor were seen outside of the locker rooms talking along with various players from both clubs. Not too long after their exchange, word came down from the league that this game was set to be postponed. And of course, Hamlin, a graduate of Pitt, who of course Pitt was just here just last week for the Sun Bowl. Head coach Narduzzi for Pitt sent out a statement on Twitter that I'll have that for you coming up in sports. But of course, all our prayers going out to Damar Hamlin tonight. Eric.
All right, Adrian, thank you for the latest update. And of course, I'll show you in a moment as well how Pitt football is honoring Damar Hamlin and trying to pray for him tonight. But we are joined now by ABC 7's medical contributor, Dr. Ogachika Alozie. Thanks for coming in on short notice. Adrian mentioned it. A lot of people, of course, may not be sports fans, but this is now a story that has taken over both for sports fans and non-sports fans alike. Not going to show the play, but just to kind of bring you up to speed, if you haven't seen it yet, it is all over social media. It is a scary situation. You have one of the players of the Cincinnati Bengals, T. Higgins, lowering his shoulder as he's carrying the football. Damar Hamlin making the tackle. The point of impact looks like it's shoulder right into his chest. Damar Hamlin stumbles a little bit, gets up. Looks like the play is normal up to that point until all of a sudden he collapses, and then everything happens from there. From your vantage point, everything you saw, take me through what is going through your mind from a medical professional background.
Yeah, so it'd be a couple of things. I think, first of all, our thoughts and prayers are with his family, right? And we really, it's such a shocking event. As somebody that watches football, as a football lover, that's a routine play. It happens probably 100 times in every game. And I was at home with my son, with family, watching the game, and when he went down, saw him fall, just initially thought, well, concussion, right? Tua for the Miami Dolphins, a lot of that has happened, but then it didn't look right. And so for me, it turned to my sister-in-law, who's also a physician. I said, hey, you got to look at this. Something's wrong. I think he may be having a heart condition. As we've later learned, he had an AED, which is an automatic electrical defibrillator, which actually shocks the heart, which makes a decision on whether the heart has the right rhythm. And so that went on for 8 to 10 minutes. And so by the time he left, as they said, he was intubated, tube down his throat to provide oxygen. He wasn't able to breathe on his own. His pulse had returned. He's in critical condition. And I think it's just one of those shocking things. You don't expect to see that in a football game. Many of us have been watching football, all of us have been watching football for years and have never seen anything like that on TV, live TV. I think the NFL did the right thing by postponing this game. And as a physician, again, I'm an infectious disease physician, but as an internal medicine doctor, understand this. He possibly, we don't want to speculate, had something called a commotio cordis, which is actually a thump to the heart, and that can actually stop the heart. And so when it stops the heart, thankfully, if there's any place that he wanted to be to get that kind of care, it's probably in an NFL stadium or an NBA stadium, a professional sports facility that has people that are certified in advanced cardiac life support that can get him back. And I think that's critical.
I started my career covering sports, and one of the first things you're told, never speculate on injuries.
Absolutely.
And that's why I want to be very careful in what we're doing, but this is an important discussion to have based on what everybody has seen out there and what everybody's talking about right now. You mentioned it. These types of collisions seemingly happen all the time in football, usually when it's of this type of severity where you see stretcher, ambulance on the field. It's a head and neck thing that you're looking at, an injury that you're looking at. But in this case, it did not look like in the play itself that there was immediate contact to the head. Yeah. It was shoulder into chest. There's this kind of hard contact, very big, fast, strong players going at very high rates of speed, head-on collisions. How can this one be seemingly so different?
You know, it's one of those things. We're so attuned to talk about concussions in the NFL, and so that's what we focus on. But I think, unfortunately, sometimes it's bad luck. It's the timing. He may have received a hit at the wrong time in his heart cycle. It's an electrical cycle, and that may have stopped his heart. Again, not to speculate, but that seems to be what may have happened. And again, I think what we really need to focus on is obviously those thoughts and prayers. He was in the right place, essentially at the right time, with trained medical professionals that could get to him immediately, take care of him, get him to a hospital, a level 1 trauma center, University of Cincinnati, that has some of the best professionals there. I think some of the calls and texts I've gotten from people already are, well, if this was to happen in El Paso, what if this has happened at the Sun Bowl? Where would they have gone, right? And I think, again, we are in a community that's blessed by a host of facilities, whether it's the hospitals of Providence Sierra Campus, Las Palmas del Sol Medical Center, or the University Medical Center El Paso, right? They are all equipped to take people in like this. And so I think one of the other things, too, people say, well, what can I do to prevent this? It's kind of too early to have that conversation. The only thing I would say is if you have a young child that's playing sports, make sure they get their pre-sports physical, right? There are a host of cardiac conditions that especially male athletes can have that can be screened for to protect them and prevent them from ever playing a game if they have that condition. And so really, again, thoughts and prayers with the family. We really hope that he pulls through this. I think he has age on his side, and so that may be a saving grace, but again, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you too. Obviously, you're not privy to all of his medical information, but 24 years old, an NFL athlete. You mentioned, I imagine timing is so important in this too, in terms of a fast response, which you have touched on already, in terms of being on an NFL football field with an ambulance right there.
Absolutely.
University of Cincinnati, level 1 trauma center, right around the corner. Absolutely. Yeah, I used to cover the Bengals myself, so I've spent many games there, covering games there, and I understand the geography there a little bit. But in terms of what happens from here, for someone who's 24 years old, an NFL athlete, what is the possibility of what could happen next? Because everyone's fear has gone to the worst and darkest place, and understandably so, given what we've seen.
Absolutely. So I think a couple of things, right? Again, there's multiple pathways that can go from this. He's in the right place. I think that's critical. He's in an ICU with intensivists, cardiologists will come in and make an assessment. From the reports we're hearing, he does have a pulse back, right? So I think that's key. The second question then becomes oxygen. Right? Is he getting enough oxygen? Was he down long enough before he got oxygen that he may have what's called a anoxic brain injury? We don't know. Way too early to tell. Usually that first 24 hours in any critical care situation is the key. And so we will get more information over the next 24 hours. Again, I think the fact that he is a world-class athlete playing a professional sport hopefully will help him. Hopefully he can recover from this, and hopefully he was not down too long before he was able to get that oxygen, the life-saving CPR that will get him back in the future.
And that was what was happening right away in that huddle. Take us through I mean, the importance of getting that oxygen.
Yeah, and so you could tell really quickly when they cut back from commercial break, and like I said, that's when I turned to my sister-in-law, the look of the players.
And the tears.
Yeah.
That type of crying from that many players.
No, that's not what happens from a head injury, right? We see these often. Again, the players kneel and everything, but the absolute look of shock and distress, whether it was from the quarterback, whether from Stephon Diggs, players crying on the field. Again, the process of applying CPR to somebody. People understand that if you're doing CPR, that's a life-threatening event.
Sure.
Could potentially die. The fact that he had to be intubated, right, to get an airway to protect his airway so that he could breathe since he wasn't breathing on his own. And so watching that, once you came back and the crowd around him, the cameras being pushed away, I think, again, not to talk about TV per se, but I think the TV crew did an immense job of continually cutting away from that situation so that the cameras weren't trying to get in and look at that. But again, what you see is trained professionals who probably have ACLS, that advanced cardiac life support training, able to get to him, apply CPR, get that AED on him, make a decision to shock or not to shock, a host of other IV medications that they may have needed to give him to restart his heart, to trigger his heart, and then get that airway, right? It's airway, breathing, circulation. And so I think those are the critical keys. He got those things. And so, again, we just need to really wait and see what happens next.
I think from a medical standpoint, I mean, we're all as fans watching. I was watching it live with my family as well. We all kind of go into this state of shock, seeing what's going on and trying to process what's happening. And you start to, as the minutes go by, you realize the magnitude and the severity of this is only increasing. But you've also got the medical background. So between the medical background and what you saw right away initially, because it sounds like right away you could sense that something was really not okay in this situation, versus the fan shock side of it. How were you kind of observing this?
Oh, I think it's a combo, right? I'm watching the game as a fan primarily, but then as things are evolving, you get that sense of shock and horror and then start to overanalyze the process, right? Well, what's happening? Why is this taking so long? And as I turned to my son, he's 12 and was with me, I said, you know, the reality is that nobody's on the field for that long with an ambulance if things are okay. Right, something's wrong. He's probably getting CPR. He's probably needing to be shocked. And so those are the things that were going through my head. And this sort of sense of doom and really getting the chills and the goosebumps, almost moved to tears, because it's just that shock of something that you've never seen on TV, right? And so it's that hybrid feeling of, yes, I'm watching it as an NFL football fan, but then also watching it as a physician and knowing that this is not good. And he's in a very critical condition, and they need to figure out what they're going to do next to get him to a hospital. So in a sense, I was relieved when the ambulance finally left the field, but knowing that that's just the first part of that journey.
Right, and it's a long journey ahead,
I
would imagine.
Maybe.
Those tears we saw evident on the field. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, several other players, of course. There's the shock on their face if they weren't actually crying. You could see the shock in their face. I'm sure many of you watching at home felt and experienced the same thing. And now it's, for many people, a wait-and-see game, and see what happens, and of course, the continued thoughts and prayers. Dr. Alozie, thank you so much for your medical expertise on this matter, our ABC7 medical contributor. But the reactions are just pouring in. I want to take you out to some of the reactions that have been coming in throughout the night. I mentioned that I would be showing you the Buffalo Bills Twitter page here first. I want to show it to you because sometimes it's an image that is really worth 1,000 words, is the cliche, but it is so powerful. And this is the image that is pinned to the top of the Buffalo Bills Twitter page, saying the thoughts and prayers of all Bills Mafia are supporting you, Damar. And you can see here on the field, and this is moments after it had happened, you can still see how full the stands are there at Paycor Stadium, formerly Paul Brown Stadium there in Cincinnati, and the whole team getting around, huddling, a moment in prayer. And I believe this is right when they were driving the ambulance off of the field. So it was many minutes after the actual injury and event took place on the field. But you can see the entire team all down, heads bowed in prayer. This on the Buffalo Bills. I mentioned also he is a former Pitt player. Of course, Pitt just playing here in the Sun Bowl on Friday. So very familiar with the borderland here. Of course, Pitt football has changed its banner to a picture of Damar Hamlin. And you can see here, they say, Damar Hamlin is the best of us. We love you three, praying for you. They, of course, also retweeted this picture from the Buffalo Bills. And throughout the night, you can see this was kind of a wait-and-see situation where people were just hanging on with bated breath to see what was ultimately going to happen with Damar Hamlin, and of course everyone fearing the worst, hoping for the best. I can show you some of the other, actually before I show you some of the other reactions, this is another thing I wanted to bring to your attention. This is something that you've probably seen if you've been scrolling through social media now. This was actually a toy drive that Damar Hamlin had set up just within the last couple of weeks through his foundation, the Chasing M's Foundation Community Toy Drive, trying to raise money. And even this is Damar Hamlin, who is organizing this fundraiser, just a GoFundMe like so many of you have done out there. And he says, as I embark on my journey to the NFL, I will never forget where I come from, and I am committed to using my platform to positively impact the community that raised me. I created the Chasing M's Foundation as a vehicle that will allow me to deliver that impact. And the first program is the 2020 Community Toy Drive. And take a look at the donations. And actually, I'm going to refresh this real quick. That's why. Because there are $200,000 plus more dollars since just a few minutes ago when I last pulled this up. And I was talking to Dr. Alozie about this actually before we came on the air. And he was telling me that there were actually some reports here that GoFundMe was no longer able to even accept some of the money because the donations started pouring in so quickly. You can see even just fan of Damar just within the last $5,000. And these donations are coming in from all over the place. And this foundation, by the way, the Toy Drive, this is Damar Hamlin's Instagram page. This is video of that toy drive. This is Damar Hamlin just recently, just from a couple of days ago, 3rd annual toy drive that he's hosting, having a good time. You can see it here. Look at the kids he's impacting, bringing them toys for Christmas, allowing people to have the joy, the celebration of the season, of the moment, signing autographs. This is a guy that, by all accounts, from the Bills organization, from Pitt football, you see it here. It reminds you a lot of like a guy like Aaron Jones, who is so giving back to his community and connects so well with the youngsters. And speaking of Aaron Jones, he has also tweeted about this as well. Of course, retweeting this, Robert Griffin III, former Baylor quarterback, Washington quarterback as well, retweeting this photo. This was the one that the Bills put out there saying, don't share the video of Damar Hamlin play. Share this because we're all praying for him and his family. That was a retweet from Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones, about an hour ago, putting up the prayer signs as well. Also, Patrick Mahomes praying hard. Please be okay, man. J.J. Watt had some powerful tweets, of course, as well. Who, by the way, he had a heart condition earlier and a heart scare earlier in the year. So I can only imagine what he's thinking as all of this is happening as well. Please be okay, man. Please be okay. That was in the game as it was all unfolding. Then an hour later, the game is not important. Damar Hamlin's life is important. Please be okay. Please. And that was when there was a lot of uncertainty as to whether or not they would try and resume the game tonight. There was a long delay before the announcement ultimately to postpone the game, suspend the game. We still don't have word yet. And there's him with Kenny Pickett. They, of course, former teammates at Pitt, now the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. So this is some final video that we're seeing of Damar Hamlin. But again, this is something that we'll have to see how it plays out from a football standpoint, but that is the furthest thing from everyone's mind in terms of when the Bengals and Steelers ultimately resume this game, how that plays out. Of course, this is at a very important time in the season, but right now, all eyes and ears are on Damar Hamlin's situation. I do want to take it on to some of the reactions from the reporters there locally. There are some really powerful things happening in Cincinnati right now. As you can see here, this is from one of the local TV reporters there. These are Cincinnati Bengals fans who were at the game and have made their way to University of Cincinnati's hospital to pray for Damar Hamlin. So fans of the game, not even of the Buffalo Bills, just fans of the game who were at the game, who witnessed, presumably, if they were in attendance of the game itself. There are obviously probably people who weren't even in attendance of the game who are making their way out there. But these are Cincinnati Bengals fans who are making their way to the hospital to be out there to join in prayer for Damar Hamlin. I want to make sure I don't scroll through and show anything of the play itself. But this is another video that was shared on his YouTube page, more of that toy drive, that giving spirit, this Chasing M's Foundation that is now upwards of close to $1 million on that GoFundMe page in terms of those donations. And this is something now that is being widely shared to really speak to who he is as a person. This is another TV reporter there locally saying, this is a quote from fans at UC Medical Center there. Again, all wearing Bengals stuff, and they're being interviewed by the local media there. Just because we're Bengals fans doesn't mean we aren't fans of him. Nobody wants to experience something like this. That was horrific. We support you, Bills. Cincinnati supports you. There is a lot still to happen. We are following everything. We will continue to follow everything, but we need to step aside, take a break. We'll be right back.